Hey everybody, it's Sharmel. Welcome back to Locks Lux Lifestyle. So today I'm here with how do I want to describe this video? So it's like chit chat, but it's also gonna be kind of like a story time. I typically don't do story time videos on my channel. This I guess would count as like my first like official story time video. And the reason I don't really do them is because I don't like just telling people my business, first of all. And then if I do tell you my business, I want it to be for a purpose. Like, I don't want to just be gossiping just to be gossiping. So when I do bring certain content to my channel, I do want it to have an overall, I want to have a purpose for why I talk about it. I'm going to be doing a story time today. So yeah, let's get into this video.
As the sun shines on all of my glory, my flaws don't look so bad at all. What was I so afraid of?
So this is something that I honestly wanted to share like a while ago. I've had this in my notes for like a while. I don't know, it's something that I've always kind of put off, but over like the last few weeks I feel like there's been like numerous things that have kind of triggered me, and it's like, okay, maybe it's time to actually do a video on it because now you can talk about it in a more purposeful manner. So I'm going to be telling you guys a story about this time that I dated this guy. I don't want to call him a narcissist because I do think that people kind of throw the word around loosely. However, I do think many of us have the potential to take on narcissistic characteristics. So I'm not going to diagnose him because I'm not a doctor, but he did have a lot of narcissistic characteristics, and overall it was just a very toxic situation that I ended up being in like a love triangle, and it was just a hot mess, okay? In the past, I've kind of told you guys about like in my mid to late 20s where I went through like a really dark period where I was just really unhappy, really unfulfilled. I've told this story several times on my channel. Usually when I talk about it, I talk about it in regards to like work life and, you know, purpose and things like that. But a huge part that I always leave out about this story is that I was dating a guy at the time who heavily contributed to this overall feeling of being unhappy. And so the first thing that triggered me is that I seen this article. It was titled like 3 signs you're in love with a narcissist. And so I'm reading the article just to read, and as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, this reminds me of such and such. And then just yesterday I was on TikTok and I ended up on this one girl's page, and then she was just telling her story about how she recently just got away from a narcissistic ex and just telling all these different stories about things that she went through. And I'm like, oh my god, I'm triggered, I'm triggered, I'm triggered. So that's what kind of really triggered me to really do this video. And then on top of that, with social media, like the constant what do you bring to the table conversation is coming up. And then I seen another thread, you know, the argument about like when you ask a guy, can you come see him, or if you can come over, and he says you can come if you want. And so yeah, all these things have been happening over like the last few weeks, and it's just been really triggering me and reminding me of this situation. And so before we get into the story, let me just say that I am no longer in this situation. I have a beautiful boyfriend who loves me, who cherishes me, who uplifts me, who values me, all that in the third. We are in a very healthy relationship. So let me just put that out there. I am no longer with this toxic individual, and I have since leveled up to somebody who genuinely appreciates my presence. And I say all that to say is that being triggered by these narcissistic stories, plus dealing with the what do you bring to the table, come see me if you want threads, and what all of this has taught me and would make me actually do the video is because I just want to get on here and say, if a man wants to be with you, if a man values you in his life, you do not have to prove anything. You do not have to jump through hoops to get his approval. You do not have to jump through hoops to make yourself worthy of a relationship with him. If a man truly wants to be with you, he will put in the effort to do it. I just see like so many men and women defending certain behaviors, and it's like, if a person wants to be with you, they're gonna be with you. You don't have to do any extra proven to that person because they want to be with you. And even my cousin, she sent me a screenshot. I don't even know these people, but it was some guy who posted his girlfriend / baby mama, and it said something along the lines of how I purposely put you through hell just so you can prove to me that you're the one, something along that lines. And I was like, what is this foolishness? I'm not saying that you don't always work on being the best you that you can be, but you don't have to prove that. If you are truly the best you that you can be, the person for you, they will notice that. And so that intro was kind of long, but I just wanted to say that before we get into this story, because I feel like I don't know how long it's gonna be. It's a lot that happened, and I don't know how long it's gonna be. I met this guy, and we're going to call him Joshua. So I met this guy. Me and Joshua met. The first time we hung out, we really clicked, like, right away. We had very opposite personality styles. He was very extroverted. I tell you guys all the time, I'm very reserved, and I think for me personally, that was one of the things that I really connected with initially, because we just used to have really good conversation. And because he was so extroverted and because I was so reserved, we used to see things differently, and I just felt like at the time it made our conversations really good. Now, people like to talk about red flags, but before there's red flags, there's always a few pink flags, okay? At the time, this is part of these pink flags. At the time, I was working in the city, San Francisco, but I lived in the East Bay, and he lived in the city. Because we hit it off so quickly, a lot of times he would come have lunch with me. He would pick me up from work. After I get off of work, we would hang out. We would do certain things. You know, we were just really enjoying each other's company. And one thing that he did in the beginning that I didn't realize at the time is that he love bombed me, you guys. And so if you don't know what love bombing is, it's basically when you like meet someone and you don't really know them that well. Sometimes people do it with gifts, where they meet someone that they like, and to reel them in, they give them all of these gifts really early on, really unprovoked. In my instance, he wasn't love bombing me with gifts, but it was a lot of affection in the beginning. And prior to dating him, I was dating this other guy whose job required him to travel. We spent a lot of time apart, and I felt like in that situation, I never really got the affection that I wanted. And so when I met Joshua, he bombed me with all kind of affection. Like within like the first couple of days, he would send me text messages like, oh, I miss you, can't wait to see you, just stuff like that. And it just really made me feel wanted. Red flag number one, or pink flag number one, is that he was love bombing me. Another pink flag, like I said, he lived in the city, so a lot of the times we would hang out in San Francisco. At the time, it was easier because I would already be there. He lived there. So a lot of the times we would really hang out in the city, but he never would come to the East Bay to see me. So like I said, initially things were really good. We had really good conversation. Now, because we had different personalities, eventually like the good conversations, they would turn into debates. And eventually we started to do a lot of bickering. And we would just like it would be like petty arguments and stuff. Because they weren't like big arguments and he never like overtly offended me with anything, you know, a lot of the petty arguments I would just kind of sweep under the rug. So we met in May, and like the first few months were fine. Fast forward to about July. Once July comes, we're still just kind of winging things. We haven't had any conversations about relationships or where we're headed. We were just truly enjoying each other's company. At the time, the building that I worked in was like a landmark building, so it was a popular place for like tourists to come. A lot of people knew about the building. We had like a outdoor seating and stuff, so a lot of people would go over there to hang out or to chill, have lunch, things like that. So it was one of the places where I would usually go to have lunch at, and he's come to have lunch with me in that exact same spot several times. So this one day in July, I'm leaving my building and I'm going out to the bench area to go sit down and take my lunch break. And as soon as I walk out the door, it's like a platform, and then like the street is at the end of the platform with like the sidewalk. So yes, I'm walking out the door and I look ahead and I see this guy that looks just like Joshua. Same build, same body frame, same style of clothes. He looks just like Joshua. And on top of that, he's with this girl holding hands. And I just froze. So I'm like, oh my God, is that is that him? Like, what's going on? And I didn't know what to do. I'm like, do I go walk up to him? Do I go get closer to see who it really is? But they were walking, so it's like I didn't have much time to decide on what I was gonna do. So what I did was I just got out my phone and I called him. In my mind, I'm like, okay, if Joshua answers and I don't see this guy on the phone, then it's not him. I was like, or if I see this guy in front of me like reach for his phone to silence it or something, then maybe that is him. So I call, nobody answers. This guy in front of me doesn't really give me any indication that he's reaching for his phone or anything. And eventually the guy and the girl, they kiss and they go separate ways. And so I'm just blowing up his phone. I'm blowing up his phone. And so he finally answers. And I don't give it away initially, but I'm just kind of like, hey, you know, what you doing?
Hey. How y'all doing?
He didn't work like a traditional schedule, so it wasn't uncommon for me to call him on his lunch break. But this particular time when I called him, he was just very dry. He sounded very suspect, and he wasn't just it just wasn't his normal personality. So I'm like, you know, what are you doing? And he's just giving me really vague answers, and I'm just like, you know, you sound really suspicious right now. So eventually he hurries me off the phone, and that kind of like pushed my suspicion even more. And so I don't remember if I text him that I swear I just saw you out front of my job or what, but at some point between my lunch break and the time that I get off of work, I explained to him that I seen a guy outside my job that looks just like you. He was holding hands with this girl and they kissed and they went separate ways. And I didn't accuse him of it, but I was just kind of like picking his brain, like, you know, were you around my job today? Like, you know, what were you doing around my lunch break? Because you sounded really suspicious. When we talked later that afternoon, he kept denying it. He said that it wasn't him. He said he wasn't even in that area. But, red flag, he proceeds to tell me, well, if it was me, why does it matter? And I'm just kind of like, excuse me? He was like, yeah, if it was me, why does it matter? And I'm like, okay, that's how you want to play this. And I'm like, okay, you know, I understand we're not in a relationship. Like I said, we had never had any conversations about a relationship. I never told anybody that this was my boyfriend. If you're not one of my close friends, you don't even know this guy existed. So I was fully aware that we weren't in a relationship. But for me, it was about just a common respect thing. It's about boundaries. And that's what I was trying to explain to him. Like, I get that we're not together, but if you choose to date other women, don't do it in front of me. Don't come to my job where I work every day with another woman. And he was like, well, it's public place. I don't need your permission to go have lunch in this area. I can go have lunch in this area with whoever I wanted to. And I'm trying to be mature about the situation. Red flag number one. This is when the gaslighting really started. If you've ever been in a toxic relationship, if you ever dealt with a narcissist, they like to gaslight you. And if you don't know what gaslighting is, it's basically a manipulation tool. It'll be validity to what you say, but instead of acknowledge that, they question you in a way that makes you in return question your own perception and your own reality. And this was something that he did a lot over the course of like 2 years. But this is where I can say that the gaslighting really started. So he kept denying that that was him outside my job, but he kept trying to flip it to say, well, if it was him, it shouldn't be a problem. So yes, that situation happened. He stood his ground on it not being him, and I had no real hard proof that it was him outside of it looking like somebody like him. So it was one of them things that we just kind of let go. I feel like the energy was definitely weird after that, but we just decided to let it go. So that happened. Within the same week, he picked me up from work one afternoon, and we were just hanging out. We ended up going back to his house for a little bit, and we were just chilling. So he had a dog at the time, and he was on his laptop like working on something, and like his dog was playing with the toy. And so his dog started to go like over to this crate that had more toys in it, and I didn't know the dog had toys in it at the time, but the dog was like scratching at the crate because he wanted something else. And so he asked me, he was like, oh, could you go get something out the crate for the dog or something? I was like, but he has a toy right there. And then he was like, well, just go get him another one. And part of me could have just got up and got the dog another toy. But I was genuinely not understanding, like, why I gotta get another toy if the dog got a toy right here that he was already playing with. I didn't get it, and that set him off, you guys. He ended up getting up and getting a toy for the dog, and he started going off on me like, all you have to do is get up and get it, and yada yada yada, like just going off on me. We eventually left his house and we went to the park so that his dog could play, and the whole time at the park he's literally berating me like a child, saying like, if my dog needs something like this, then you should just do it. He say, my dog don't do nothing to nobody, I treat my dog well, and all I asked for you was to get this for the dog, and you made it a big issue. And so eventually I'm just like, I'm ready to go. And so that incident happened, and he was really pissed at me for not getting that thing for his dog. Like, that man cut me off and didn't talk to me for like 2 to 3 months. And I was just kind of like, whatever, because you're hella weird right now. If we're not gonna talk, then cool, we're not gonna talk. I can't remember if I reached out to him or not, but he definitely like just cut me off like as soon as I did something that he didn't agree with. So as long as I was okay with everything that he did or everything that he felt was right, everything was good. But as soon as I did something that he personally didn't agree with, then all hell broke loose. So fast forward to like October. Now, we hadn't talked. It was around my birthday. I remember posting something on my like Instagram story about my birthday coming up. He responded to my story, and we basically kind of reconnected from there. He came back again. Like, everything that happened that past summer was just kind of like, we never really talked about. It was just kind of ignored, and he basically kind of started with the love bombing again. Like, you know, I want to see you, like I haven't seen you in so long, and blah 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 blah, and what you doing for your birthday, and you know, I want to celebrate with you. A bunch of fluff. And so around this time, I remember I had like a cold or something that I was trying to get rid of before I went out for my birthday. I had plans to go like shopping to find me something to wear for my birthday, and then I was gonna go home. He was like, well, can I see you today? And I'm like, well, I'm going to go shop or whatever, so if you want to meet up with me, you can, but I didn't plan on staying out here for too long because I'm not feeling well and I'm just trying to get better. And so he's like, oh yeah, that's fine, I just want to see you because I haven't seen you in a while. So the day we supposed to meet, he tried to redirect my plans. So I had already told him what my plans were, and so when it was close to the time we were supposed to meet up, he was like, oh well, I'm out doing this. And he was trying to get me to change my plans to go do what he wanted to do, even though I had clearly explained to him that I wasn't feeling good and I wanted to go shopping and go home and rest. Again, we had just literally reconnected, and he had the tendency to, everything just had to go his way. Whatever he wanted to do, that's what we were supposed to do. If he felt like he didn't want to do something that I wanted to do, then he would always try to get me to change my plans, or he would just leave me hanging. So basically that day, that's what he did. He left me hanging. We were supposed to hang out. He made other plans to go do what he wanted to do, and then I went on about my day. And again, we hadn't been talking, so I didn't take it personally, but this is just a pattern that he started to develop. From like October until like January of the next year, we were in a decent place. We're in a decent place, but we still never had any real conversations about like what we were doing, where we were going, what this relationship was, what this situation was, if we were ever going to be in anything more exclusive. We never had a conversation about that. And although we were in an okay place, the minor things that used to get on my nerves in the beginning, they started to amplify and grow. So like, we were having more petty arguments, and then some of those petty arguments were turning into full-blown arguments, and it was just, I don't know, it was just a really weird space. Knowing what I know now, I should have never allowed him to get access to me in that way again. But you know, he was very charismatic. Like from the beginning, like I said, when we first met, one of the things that really drew me in is that he was very charismatic. He was very charming, and so it's like, I feel like all that time I was always yearning and trying to get that very charismatic Joshua that was in the beginning, that was love bombing me. So yes, this is happening. Now this is when things start to really go south. So fast forward to January. I remember it was one day in particular, we were texting off and on all day. It was just kind of like a regular day. And at the time he said he was just with his cousins and they were hanging out. Blah, 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 blah. We're texting, nothing important. So at some point during the day, I ended up getting a Snapchat from him, but we were already texting. And so when I got a Snapchat, I'm like, why is he sending me a Snapchat when we were just texting? Why couldn't you just say this in a text message? And so in the snap, it says, call me. And the whole time I'm just like so confused. And so I call him, and I knew he was with his cousin, so he's kind of like trying to have a conversation with me, but not really paying attention to me, and then trying to entertain his guests. Then he was like, why did you call me? I told you I was with my cousins. And I'm like, you told me to call you. And he was like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, yes, you did. I'm like, you sent me a snap telling me to call you. And then he was like, you know that time when you thought you saw me at your job? I think you having one of those moments again. And I'm like, no, bro, I swear you just told me to call you. So, you know, with Snapchat, the message disappears. But I took a screen of like my conversations, and it said that I had got a message from him like 15 minutes ago. And so once I sent him the screenshot, he heard me off the phone, and I'm texting him like, what's going on? Like, who sent me that message? And he was like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm gonna figure it out. And he kind of just blew the situation off. So again, another one of them situations that's just like not adding up. It's not adding up. And I'm like, okay. Either later that day or the next day, he ends up telling me some BS story about how somebody for his business, somebody that he used to work with, they had his passwords, all of his like social media accounts, because they used to help him with his social media accounts, and he used the same password for everything. They hacked his Snapchat. And I'm like, that may have some truth to it, but I'm like, why would this person specifically tell me out of all of your people on Snapchat, why would they specifically tell me to call them? And he could never really give me a real answer about it, but I started to feel like something's not right. So after the whole Snapchat situation happened, it just made me really uncomfortable. Although we talked about it again, his response was very vague. And I'm like, who is trying to reach out to me directly? At the time, I had my Snapchat. I used my Snapchat, but I never publicized my Snapchat. I have a personal Instagram page, and then I have like my Snatched by Sharmel page. At the time, both of these pages were public. And if you wanted to find my Snapchat, it wasn't a hard thing to find. It's not that I was being necessarily private. I just never publicized it. And this person, whoever hacked his Snapchat, it felt like really intentional with this person messaging me. And so it made me really uncomfortable. I just kind of was like, okay, I'm just going to make my pages private. So a couple of weeks passed by. Me and him go out. We were at a bar. We were playing pool at the bar. I took a picture of him and posted it on my Snapchat story. Now, this picture was on my story for literally 1 second. I did not post it for a long time. It wasn't a close-up. It was just him literally at the table playing pool. So I did that. Now, we had a good night. Everything was cool. Everything was fun until the next morning when all hell broke loose. I see on my personal Instagram page that I have a friend request. And at the time, I'm still doing YouTube. There's a lot of people who follow me on my personal Instagram page. So me having a friend request from a girl on my personal Instagram page didn't really seem out of the blue. It wasn't out of the ordinary for me. So I feel like I seen the friend request sometime that night when I was actually out with him, but I didn't pay any attention. And then the following morning, I noticed that I had a pending DM in the filter. And so it's from this girl, and she sent me this long message and was basically like, hey, you don't know me, but I know you know Joshua, and I know you were with him last night, and I just want to let you know that he's not the person that he says he is. And I've read you guys' personal messages, and just going on giving me details about he and I's current situation. She never said she was his girlfriend, but she's currently dealing with him as well. I'm the type of person, when it comes to like, I don't even know if this would be considered cheating, because he technically wasn't in a relationship with either one of us. But in general, when it comes to a cheating partner, I've always been the type of person where it's like, my issue is always going to be with my partner. I'm never going to go to the outside party and speak to them or do anything, because I don't know them. They don't owe me anything. So I would never hold them up to that expectation. And so I was annoyed by the message, because it's like, obviously I knew that we weren't in a relationship. I knew that he wasn't my boyfriend, but all these pink and red flags have been going on, and I feel like I was more hurt because it's like, I knew it wasn't what I thought it was, but to have it confirmed is just a new feeling. And then I was really annoyed with her because she put it under the guise of, I'm just trying to look out for you. But she was saying that she was reading our personal messages. So I responded. I'm just like, with all due respect, I don't know you. You don't know me. I don't know what the situation is with you and Joshua, but you need to basically keep all the smoke for him, and then I'll do what I need to do for myself. And so I guess she didn't like my response, because it's like, girl, I don't know you, so I'm going to tread lightly with you. And come to find out, she was the one that had messaged me 2 weeks before from his Snapchat account. That previous summer, when I thought he was outside of my job, he still maintains his story that it wasn't him, but he was with this girl. We'll call her Lucy. Like, she was trying to kind of do that homegirl thing, but she really wanted to tell me to leave him alone, basically. And I was like, yeah, you can say all that, but at any point where you feel the need to go behind somebody's back and read personal messages, like, I don't trust you no more than I trust him at this point. Don't try to homegirl me, but then throw my tea in my face as well. So I'm like, yeah, I hear all of that, but I don't really trust neither one of y'all. I took screenshots and I sent him the screenshots of the DMs, and I don't think he ever really responded to it. And when he responded, again, the gaslighting cloak. So we would have these issues where something would be right in front of us, and when I would bring it to his attention, he would make it seem like it wasn't real, make it seem like I'm just imagining these things and that they're not as serious as they are. When I brought this instance, I'm like, okay, what's the truth? Like, what's going on with you and this girl? And he was just still being very vague about it. He basically was just saying that neither one of us are his girlfriends. He's not in a relationship with either one of us, and basically he was trying to downplay the entire situation with him and this girl. Come to find out, like, she was basically taking care of him. She told me that too. He semi-confessed to what was going on and basically was like, oh, well, she's a friend, and basically he fell on hard times, blah 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 blah. She helped him out, but he said that he told her that he really didn't want a relationship with her. He just wanted to be friends. But he had a way of using his charm and charisma to kind of like give you what you want, so that you think you're headed down the road of a relationship. But when it comes to actually following through with those things, he would make it seem like you were crazy. And so he was basically doing the same thing to her as what he was doing to me. Now, I wasn't taking care of him, so that was the clear difference. I kind of put a boundary in the place where it was like, I like you, I have fun with you, I'm gonna entertain you, but I was really strict on not trying to give him too many like girlfriend privileges. So when he would ask me to do things, I would politely decline, because it's like, you know, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Like, and so after that incident happened, I feel like things only got worse. So initially we did kind of take a break, because I let him know, like, this is getting too messy for me. I told him I never pressured you for a relationship, but there still needs to be some kind of boundary. So I kind of withdrew from the situation. We kind of separated a little bit. We weren't talking as regularly. We weren't seeing each other as much. And he had it under the guise of him just trying to do better, get his stuff together. He still maintained that he wasn't in a relationship with her, although she was still very much in the picture. So we went through this again, a couple months, reconnecting, separating, not really knowing what we're doing. And then I think like that following summer, and I was at his house. Literally, I was smoking a hookah. You could literally just probably see like this much of me, right? Nothing else. You may have been able to see the wall a little bit in the background, but it's not like I had my camera going like this. It was pretty much focused on me. Next thing I know, she's in my DMs again. She was like, you really need to leave Joshua alone. He's not gonna tell you the truth. Trying to tell me he had a baby on the way. And this is why I didn't trust her initially. The first time she messaged me, she tried to make it seem like everything was cool, and then and she was looking out for me. And then months later, when I was still dealing with him and he was still dealing with her, she was just kind of like straight to the point, like, you need to leave him alone. Like, literally word for word, she told me, you need to leave Joshua alone. But I feel like her initial reaching out to me was her trying to get rid of me. Like I said, he made it very clear that he wasn't in a relationship with her. She never said that he was her boyfriend either. But I hate to put it like this because I don't want to use these terms. I was her biggest competition, I guess you could say. And this is why I said in the beginning, like, if somebody is truly for you, you don't have to compete for their attention or for their time. And you're not gonna have to compete with nobody, because that person will be with you. At the time, I didn't want to admit that I was competing to be with him. But it's like, once she started to do too much, it's kind of like, girl, he not with neither one of us technically. Like, we're honestly in the same boat. He dogging both of us out, but I feel like just being dumb. The more she tried to fight for the situation, I felt like subconsciously I would do the same thing. And then for him, I feel like once everything was kind of out in the open, he really didn't have to hide anything, really. He would just be an asshole for no reason. At that point, we had already developed the cycle that he can blow up and do what he want to do, and then at some point we will reconnect and act like nothing happened. I can take accountability for my part that I played in it, and I allowed those things to happen. I was an active participant in the cycle. And so, like I said, once everything was out in the open, I feel like his personality just was a sinking ship. Like, before, when we would have disagreements, we would try to resolve the issue, but it got to the point where it was like, whenever he was mad, he would just pick at me. Again, he would gaslight me. He would like find things to throw in my face. Like I said, she admitted that she took care of him. This girl, she was also Latina. And so she admitted that she would take care of him. And I told you guys, he knew that it was certain things, that there were certain girlfriend privileges that I was not going to give him without us actually being exclusive. And so whenever he would get mad at me, he would turn around and be like, oh, that's what's wrong with black women, and that's why, basically telling me that that's why he has a hard time committing to me, because I haven't proved that I'm basically worth committing to. The arguments, they started off petty, but once like everything was laid out, it was more like personal, and he would say things to try to like really hurt my feelings, to break my spirit. And it's so crazy because in hindsight, looking back at the situation, I was in a far better situation than he is. And that's not me being arrogant, because we are all one paycheck, one accident away from being down bad. So that's not a dig at him, but in hindsight, I was in a better position than him. And because of that, I felt like he did everything that he could to like try to bring me down a little bit. So yeah, that's what kind of happened. And yeah, he was just very much playing both sides, and I don't think he was necessarily encouraging Lucy, but he never put a stop to it either. Lucy made herself known in January, and all of this continued through December until I like really cut him off. Okay guys, so you guys see, it's a quick little outfit change. This story time ended up being way longer than I had anticipated. My camera died the last time. I'm just back to finish up this story. So I already started editing it, and a couple of things that I want to mention before I finish the end of this story. The first thing is that when Lucy made herself known, I will say that I did start to date. So I decided I was not gonna cut off all of my options for this person who had no intention in being exclusive with me. And so that helped me a little bit. I ended up meeting my current boyfriend during this period where I started to date a little bit. But during that time, when I started to see other people, it didn't really make me feel good, because I wasn't doing it genuinely. None of the dating options at the time would go anywhere, because I honestly wasn't over the situation with Joshua. So now back to the story. I think I left off around this time. I was just going through a lot, very unhappy, and I did videos about this, and this is where the time where I had to really get intentional about my happiness. And so around this time, I had got a new job. My previous job, I hated it. It was draining mentally and physically, and Joshua was actually one of the people who kept advocating for me to find something new. So when I finally got this job, he didn't really seem as happy for me as I would have expected him to be. So starting my new job was something that I was really happy about, and it ended up being a blessing in more ways than one. First thing is that I was just in a new place, more money, better environment, things like that, which helped like just change my overall morale. The second thing that it did was when I started my new job, I left the city. So I was no longer working in San Francisco, and honestly, I was already kind of mentally checked out of the situation with Joshua. I said it's September. At this point, I can really see that this really isn't going anywhere, but because it had continued for so long, it was normal. The toxicity got normal, and I honestly just really didn't know how to separate myself from him, because every time I would try, every time we would take like breaks here and there, somehow we would find our way back to each other. I had no reason to really go to the city anymore, especially on a daily and regular basis. So that's where like the separation started to really come in. And like I told you guys in the beginning of the story, it was rare that he would come to the East Bay to see me. I'm not going to say he never came or we never did anything on my side of town, but it wasn't a regular thing. When we first started to like really separate ourselves from each other, it wasn't intentional, but it was no longer convenient either. So that was the first good thing that kind of started the separation process from me with him. But I was still continuing to see him. Lucy was still very much involved in the picture. I remember one instance, this is like in November, he invited me out to like a concert, and went to the concert. At first everything's going good, and then at some point, like, I pull out my phone to like post on my story. He was doing the same thing, but once he realized I was posting it onto my story, he was like, why are you posting that? Why can't you just live in the moment? Mind you, he's doing the same thing. So if it's such an issue for me filming and posting, why wouldn't you want to live in the moment either? And so at this point, like, I'm not stupid. Like, I know the reason why you didn't want me to post it is because you didn't want Lucy to see. And if you and I are posting the same thing, then obviously she would know that we were together. So the concert incident happened, and then fast forward to Christmas. Christmas is coming up. It's like the weekend before Christmas. I believe Christmas fell on a Tuesday this year. Christmas Eve was on a Monday. And so on Christmas Eve, I remember like both of my parents had to work, and I think my brother had to work also. And then like my nieces and nephews, I think they were going with their other side of the family on Christmas Day. So as a family, we decided to celebrate Christmas a little early, and we planned on like celebrating that Sunday and exchanging gifts and everything, because everyone's schedule was kind of different on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So that weekend before Christmas, I remember him hitting me up, or I don't know if I hit him up. Somehow we talked, and he was trying to get me to come see him that weekend. I explained to him what I just told to you guys about my family celebrating Christmas early. He was basically trying to make me change my plans, but this was my family and plans was set in stone. So it's like, no, I'm definitely not about to change my plans that I have with my family. But I told him like Christmas Eve I should be available because my family, they all have different schedules. So I asked him, I didn't intrude myself. I asked him, do you have plans on Christmas Eve? This man told me no. So he told me he didn't have plans, but basically, I don't remember what he said word for word, but basically in a roundabout way, he told me that he didn't have plans, but he didn't want to confirm plans with me because something better might come up. So I was definitely offended by that. Also, I didn't understand why it would be such an issue, because the year before, I actually spent Christmas Eve with him and his family. So I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. So now it's Sunday. It's the day before Christmas Eve. We're still not sure what we're going to do, but we came to like a consensus that we would play it by ear. I would reach out to him, or he would reach out to me to kind of see what his plans were for the day, and we would go from there. Christmas Eve was kind of taken care of, and then we just proceeded to have like a normal conversation, talk, you know, normal phone call like we usually would do. So at some point in the conversation, he was talking about a movie or something, and it was a movie that I had never seen. So I was asking him what the movie was about. He flipped out on me, started just being rude, condescending, telling me like if I really wanted to know what the movie was about, then I could go on Google. Then he proceeded to like pick at the type of TV shows and movies or whatever that I watch, and it was just so unnecessary and unprovoked. And I was just honestly, he just became really insufferable at this point. He ends up going off on me over a movie. Somehow we get off the phone because at this point I'm just like annoyed. He eventually texts me and apologizes, but I was just already turned off by the whole situation, and I had told myself I'm not calling him tomorrow. If his schedule's free and he wants me to come around, then he'll call me and we'll go from there. So the next morning comes, it's Christmas Eve. I remember it was storming this day. So I was kind of happy that I had made the decision not to actually reach out to him. All morning goes by. I don't reach out to him. He doesn't reach out to me. Now it's about like noon, and he finally calls me. As soon as I answer the phone, he starts going off.
You made a big deal about how you wanted to come see me, and here I am waiting for you to call. You never called me. What was the point of you doing all of that? I'm sitting over here waiting on you to call.
And I'm just like, but if you were free, just like you're going off on me for not calling, you could have easily picked up the phone and said, hey, my schedule is open. Do you want to come spend the day with me? I'm getting upset, so eventually we start like having a full-blown argument. Somehow the call gets disconnected. He probably hung up on me, but I remember the call getting disconnected, and I'm calling him back. Now he's not answering. So I text him, and I'm like, I don't understand what the big idea is. I'm like, it's still early. Do you want me to come or not? And he basically responded and was like, no, I don't. And so at that point, I had just made a very conscious decision that I was done. I was done with the situation. I was done with him. I was done with everything that came with that whole whatever it was. A lot of times in my life, I felt like I just always had, I didn't really have a choice in the matter of a lot of things. I just had to kind of deal with whatever options that I had. And at this point in my life, I was really letting go of that idea, letting go of that mentality, and choosing to make decisions that made me happy. In the past, when I tried to be done with the situation, like, I still had emotions involved, and I was leading with my emotions instead of leading with logic. I just did a video talking about getting in control of your emotions, and this is around the time where I really started to work on that. And so yeah, I was done. On Christmas, he didn't text me Merry Christmas or anything like that. I didn't text him Merry Christmas, nothing. He calls me the day after Christmas in usual fashion, acting like nothing ever happened. I remember being like extremely dry, and he's just kind of like, well, what's wrong with you? And I'm just like, you know, I'm just kind of over this. I'm kind of over us. And he just felt like I was being dramatic, and I guess he didn't really believe that I was done with the situation. And I'm explaining to him, it's like, at this point, there's nothing I can do to make you happy. At this point, I don't even think you like anything about me, so why do I continue to stretch myself to make you want me when that's clearly not what you want to do? And so we got off the phone, and we really didn't talk anymore from that day forward. I remember a week later, it was like New Year's Eve or the day before New Year's Eve, and he posted on Snapchat, and it had like a Brooklyn filter on it, and I seen that, and I'm like, So I remember responding, I'm like, where are you at? You in New York? He basically was like, yeah, and he said he was out there for New Year's Eve. And I'm like, interesting. And I left it at that. And it was interesting to me because around this time, he had just started a new job that month. And I'm like, what jobs is letting you take off of work this soon? And how you got money to go to New York and you just started your job? And not just go to New York, but go to New York for New Year's Eve, which is known to be expensive as hell. So that's weird.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
And so I had my suspicions about who he was out there with, but I didn't even say anything to him. I just kept my suspicions to myself. And then like maybe later that day or the next day, he posted again on his Snapchat, and he's just doing a video, you know, getting a picture of the scenery. And who do I see in the background? Lucy. And I'm like, oh my God. At that point, it just kind of confirmed that I had made the right decision about cutting him off and not wanting to be with him. And then everything after that was pretty much easy because I had made the conscious decision to detach myself from everything. A few days into the new year, he hits me up like, come see me. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, I don't want to come. Yeah, like acting like nothing happened. Same cycle. Argument, ghost me, come back like nothing's happened. He's still trying to convince me, and eventually I'm like, you know, I wish you the best. And so he didn't respond to that. And then like maybe a week later, he tried it again. He texted me and was like, I miss you, I hope all is well. So I told him like, bro, you have been a horrible person to me while expecting me to go above and beyond for you, and I'm just kind of done with it. And he apologized and acknowledged that he wasn't a good friend to me. He felt like that's all he needed to say and that things would go back to what they were. And I'm like, yeah, that was nice of you to apologize, but I'm still cool off of you. And up until this point, he didn't know that I knew he spent New Year's in New York with Lucy. And I told him, I'm like, you know, I know that you spent New Year's with Lucy, and that's fine. But I was like, as long as you're involved with both of us, it's a really messy situation. At this point, it's not bringing me any peace, joy, happiness, anything. And at the end of the day, I feel like your loyalty lies with her. You know, as much as he tried to downplay their relationship, as long as he was getting those benefits from her, then that's where he was going to be. And as soon as I said that, I felt like all the remorseful, apologetic act, it went right out the window. And, you know, personality switch, it was just so predictable at this point. Personality switch, and he's like, there's no battle. So why are you even talking about loyalty? I'm like, yeah, you say there's no loyalty, but at the end of the day, for one, that hasn't stopped you from dealing with her. And for two, by you dealing with her, you continue to enable her bad habits as well. So I'm just kind of like, I'm done. Once I started calling him out on his BS, he stopped responding. He never acknowledged that because, again, everything was always everyone else's fault. The mental Olympics he put me through, just me always having to go out of my way. There was never any consideration for what I was dealing with, things that I had going on. Everything was really just about him. And if I could say one thing, it's like a lot of times you know when something's not right. And even if you know if something's not right, you know what feels good to you and what doesn't feel good to you. Even after all of this happened, like in hindsight, I knew I wasn't happy. Even in the moment, I knew I wasn't happy. But for some reason, I was trying to make myself feel like it was worth me going through all of this to have this relationship that was never going to happen and that was never meant to be. And honestly, I wish I could say that ended everything and his antics stopped there, but no, the foolishness continued. Like at least a year after I had like cut all ties with him, by this time I'm like in a relationship, and he would still message me from time to time and be like, oh, are you still with your boyfriend? Are you single yet? I want to take you out. I want to do this. And I'm like, what's not clicking with you? Like my boyfriend who I'm with now, it was literally like a day and night difference. And that's why I told you guys before, like if a man truly wants to be with you, you will know. I was literally competing. I was literally jumping through hoops because the thing with manipulators is that they will make you feel like you're the problem. And that's kind of how I started to feel. I started to feel like something was wrong with me. My confidence had took a huge hit. And like I said, this whole time I was really doing better than he was. But I allowed him to basically drag me down. And my man now, he made it known from the jump, like, I want you. And that was it. I was courted properly. I wasn't having to go out of my way. I just wanted to share this story time, you guys. Like I said, the overall message is that if a man wants to be with you, you will know. You don't have to jump through any hoops. You don't have to prove yourself. If a man or if anybody views you as valuable, then you don't have to beg to be around them. You don't have to beg to be in their presence or anything of that nature. And yes, this is my narcissist story. I hope you all enjoyed this story time. I don't know if I can continue to do story times because I get long-winded naturally when I talk, and I feel like filming this was a lot. But yes, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in my next video.